Holy cow, the face shove heard round the world. Finally, TUF 31, episode 6, we break it all down. Conor McGregor calls me a
I'll take you, little take you.
but I tell him, show up with my team. Kurt, Hail Mary Hollaball gets it done, but not before Lee Hammond shows the world that he's got a bright future in mixed martial arts from the same hometown as Conor, Dublin 12. We break it all down with one of the funniest comedians, stand-up comedians on the planet, Nate Bargatze. Bruce, hit him with the intro.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time! The Ultimate Fighter Season 31 Reaction Show, brought to you by CarShield, hosted by Michael Chandler.
You heard the man, Bruce Buffer. This is the TUF 31 Reaction Show with yours truly, Michael Chandler, brought to you by CarShield. This is episode 6. Before we get going, let's do a little housekeeping. Conor, hit us with the giveaway winner.
Our next winner's name is Noah Valenzuela.
Noah Valenzuela, you are the official winner. For everybody who doesn't know, the giveaway we are doing every... Head up. The giveaway we are doing every single week is a signed copy of As a Man Thinketh by yours truly with a bookmark of a Panini card for that will be shipping out to you guys at the end of this series that ends on August 15th. The way to enter is in the description here if you're watching here on YouTube, or in the show notes on audio, and also my link in bio. Now, Episode 6 is very special to all of us because it is probably the most exciting thus far between Conor and I. And I also have a very exciting guest, a man who is near and dear to my heart, a friend of mine, a golf partner of mine, but also one of the funniest men on the entire planet, stand-up comedian Nate Bargatze.
What's up, dude?
How are you, man, dude?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yes, we've been talking about doing this for a while. I am so happy that you are here, and because this was a doozy.
This was a big one, man. This was a big one. So I'm excited. That's what I was waiting for. I was waiting for just the right episode I kept acting like I was busy.
Yeah, yeah.
Just slowly
until the
like,
culmination.
You know what? I'm free on this one, the big one. Yeah.
They've been playing this spat between Conor and I up for the last, since the very beginning of the show, and now it finally comes to a head, which we will get into.
Yeah.
But man, thank you so much for being on. We've played golf a couple times, and you are an avid follower of mixed martial arts.
I am.
Which is always great for me when I, meet somebody that I respect in your, in your profession. Freaking hilarious human being that you are, but also a guy who can kind of knows the ins and outs of mixed martial arts, watches the ups and downs and all of that.
Yeah, I love it. I'm newish into it. The past few years, but I'm a giant fan of it, and it's maybe my favorite sport right now. I just think the way I actually met Dana. Dana came to a show in Vegas.
Oh, there you go.
And I got to tell him, because it's like what I think he's being an owner of a league. He says everything. Y'all just talk so openly about everything.
Yeah.
And I think that's what is so attractive to UFC is, it was when Tom Brady's going to retire, it's like, is he going to retire or not retire? There's no one ever talks. And I remember when Khabib, is he going to fight again? And then Dana would just be like, nah, he just called me and said he's not fighting. And you're like, they could have played that, I don't know, is he, maybe, all that. And they just straight up
he told you that before it was announced, or you're saying he had?
No, he said it in he said, remember after Khabib was done, and then Dana was trying to get Khabib to come back.
Oh, I remember, big time, because I was in the mix there, and that's how I got a phone call too, where they were like, "Hey, we just had dinner with Khabib. He ain't coming back. You're fighting Charles Oliveira."
Oh, yeah.
So I was in that mix too. But that's the great thing about Dana is he just says, it's nice when you're in charge, when you're kind of in charge and what you say goes, you can pretty much say.
Well, he said it in a post conference. Yeah. It wasn't, that's what I mean. It would have been like LeBron James' decision. It could have been this big thing. Is this guy coming out of retirement? They could have milked it. And it was just afterwards, he just got a call and was like, Khabib said, nah. He's done.
Yeah.
And you're like,
Which I'm sure they worked on it for, a couple phone calls here and there.
It sounded like he literally talked to him right before he walked on.
It probably was. Well, because that's what he always says too, because if you follow Dana enough, he's like, he'll be sitting in a room full of reporters like, you effing people. Like, I ain't going to tell you guys anything,
Yeah.
So he kind of does keep all the stuff that he wants to keep close to his chest, until it's time to be like, all right, now I can tell you,
Yeah.
Every now and then he'll be like, Lene is one of his main kind of PR people. Like, hey, Lene, can we tell him about the thing? Oh, we can. Okay. So, hey guys, so the thing is, this is happening, or, hey, this isn't happening. And so it's really funny, which obviously he's the head of it. You know, so what he says goes, but he is very, and that's what I loved about mixed martial arts too. And that's why I think so many people are drawn to it, not only because it's a metaphor for life, it's a fighting, and it's the ups and the downs and the toils and just the tragedies and the triumphs all rolled into one. Plus it's very entertaining. Plus it's a little bit fringe, because you're like, oh, people who like mixed martial arts, are they kind of weird because they like blood and guts, or are they kind of like everyone else? Plus it's especially in the UFC, it's such a meritocracy. It's like, hey, as long as you do what you said you were going to do, you show up, you fight, you win, you do well, you keep your nose clean. You're not a complete, just horrible person to deal with.
Yeah.
You're going to keep climbing. You're going to keep doing all right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, the fact that y'all can say whatever you want to say. And it just is, like even the blood, like I can't watch a gory movie.
Yeah.
I'm very sensitive. For some reason, I'm okay with UFC.
The real stuff is okay.
Stuff. For some reason, like I'll be watching it and people are like, oh man. And I'm like, I have no problem with any of this. But I can go watch a movie and you're like Saw and you're like, I can't watch this. Yeah. It's like too much. But it's, the fighting, it's just the best, dude. It's,
it's very, it's
the most raw, like it's two dudes fighting.
Yeah.
So it's not, there's no team aspect. Golf is golf is it's him, it's you versus, it's a bunch of people, but it's kind of fun like that.
But and there's such high stakes because there is nobody else to blame. Like even we just talked about the Rocket Mortgage Cup or Classic last night. And I remember they were doing the playoff and there was three dudes. First one hits it right down the fairway. Ricky Fowler hooks it like over the people, over the crowd in a horrible lie. And we're like, well, there we go. It's over. And then so you're like, hey, you're about to see this guy's worst moment, of his life. He finally thinks he's going to come back after 4 years of not winning a tournament or whatever.
Yeah, but lost his card. I mean, he wasn't even going to majors.
Yeah.
And he's one of the most famous golfers.
Right. So you're like, I'm watching this and I don't watch a lot of golf, but I think that's what you're kind of making the metaphor too, or the kind of the comparison. Even if he has a horrible shot, he's not getting his face beat in or getting choked out or getting an arm, it's like, the highs are very high but the lows are so low. Plus they come with bodily harm. And that's why people love mixed martial arts.
Yeah. Well, it's going to take you so long. You can't just get right back up into it. Cause it's like, you got to train and it's like, what is you're hoping to fight 3 times a year? Is that like
3 is kind of the goal. You know? I'm not going to fight for a full year now, so.
And that's like the worst because you want to be kind of.
I've always been very active.
Yeah. Is it because it's like getting hit? Like you need to get hit to be okay with getting hit?
That too. That's part of it too. I think you can kind of question yourself like, hey, am I getting soft because I haven't been in like a real fight, Yeah. Every now and then I have that thought. But then again.
You just go to a bar and just start.
just go to a bar, get into a bar fight.
I'll fight all of you here.
The backwoods here. Yeah. Old Hickory, Tennessee. Yeah. Just go head up. Old Hickory, Tennessee.
That's why I think I like Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz feels like someone that he will fight someone in
he does fight people.
I know. He's on the internet every week. Funny that it's like the level, because it's like the idea of it is you're not. I mean, I love it so much that he goes. Nate Diaz, like, because I'm sure a lot of people think they want to fight you guys, and you just have to go like, I'm not going to fight you, and then Nate Diaz is like, I will fight you.
Hey, he won't fight you, but man, I'll fight you.
I would love it.
That's probably what most of them think. But like, hey, he's a pro fighter. He gets paid a bunch of money to fight. He's probably not going to fight me. All of a sudden, you run into Diaz. You're like, oh, this dude will fight me.
And either one, Nate or Nick.
Nate or Nick. And we talked about that playing golf because it is funny. He's in he got in a fight at Bourbon Street or wherever he was in Memphis or Louisiana. You're like, dude, you get paid millions of dollars and you're out there fighting a dude for free. Yeah. And possibly could go to jail if you hurt somebody. But
He just put that guy to sleep. He did a nice. He was like very calm with it.
He just walks away.
He just walks away and goes,
And
"He's
we're off.
fine.
And we're
He's
off."
fine. We're off." Yeah.
So speaking of high stakes, obviously this fight, every fight here is high stakes because obviously we've talked about, and we kind of talked too before we started rolling about the veterans. This is kind of their last shot.
Mm-hmm.
The prospects, this is the best opportunity that they could have, and for the prospects, this is their last opportunity or the best second chance they ever could have asked for, and actually the best third chance that Kurt Hollabaugh, Team Chandler could have, and it's such high stakes for numerous reasons. Obviously, this is Kurt's third time in the UFC, but also this is Conor's guy. They showed a clip of him and Lee Hammond when a picture of him and Lee Hammond, and Lee Hammond had to be 13 years old, looks tiny, skinny little dude from Crumlin. They're from the same hometown, Dublin 12, they call it, Crumlin. So Conor's obviously very emotionally invested in this one, like very, this was probably his moment. And they did a good job of creating that where, and you probably have that maybe similar in your industry where it's kind of like you got a guy coming up, or maybe you got a friend, you're like, man, I just hope he makes it. I hope he gets his big break. I hope they let me bring him onto this, or maybe he does win this, last comic standing, or this is that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And Conor probably says, hey man, if we can get this guy through here, we can have another guy from my hometown making it to the big leagues.
Well, when you got Conor, you got this big star, and then he's talking about you on that thing. So it's basically, if this kid if you just go win a couple fights, it's like maybe this stardom of Conor can just be like, your life could get really, it could go nuts because it's, you're his dude, and then that's a storyline, and all you need is a storyline of that's what sells a fight. He's going, no, that's his guy. He's only 13, and then you're like, oh, okay, and now you want to watch it, like and all that, and it just is, and then for what's happened is like it just crushes that, and I mean it does. He's young, so it won't matter. He can still go back. And for the other guy is, it's a veteran. And as you see the veteran stuff, I mean, that stuff just matters so much.
Was it, 26 years old to 35, or no, and Conor's 35. So he's been, training with them since they were, at least the last 10 years or so. And then Kurt Hollabaugh is 36, he's 19-7. And Lee Hammond is only 5-0, So, let's roll the clip here of how this fight goes. Obviously, Lee Hammond, we talked a lot during the fight. Lee, to me, was the biggest guy on the show, easily. Taller than everybody else, denser than everybody else, had a tough weight cut. And what we're going to show here is pretty much the first minute or so is pretty much how the entire fight
What
went.
does he weigh? Like, so this was 155, but what do they weigh? Like 185?
Yeah, well, so I told you. So Lee had a tough time making weight. So actually, before we go into that, they didn't actually show it, but Lee Hammond didn't make weight the first time. And for everyone who doesn't know, you get two chances. So you could step up on there. You could be, I think he ended up being 0.3 over, maybe a quarter of a pound over. They give you 2 hours to cut the weight. You get an extra 2 hours. He ends up coming back after an hour or so, and he makes the weight. And they even asked me, Coach Kavanaugh came up and said, hey, because we had just done the catch weight thing with Timur and
they
Trevor
wanted
Wells.
to get you to. I just want and you were like, no, you got to come up. To one. It's so you picked such a weird number. I never would have guessed that number.
Yeah, no, I think it was more just like, hey, whatever poundage we can get, give me 3 pounds, give me 4 pounds, give me 5
You're like
pounds.
144 at first, and I was like, I was watching it, and I was like, I didn't even know you could do that. Like, and then you're like, all right, 142. You're like, okay, like such a weird number.
Fine, I'll take the 2.
Yeah,
as long as I get that, basically it's it's a 6 pound allowance. So it's a good. But on this, Lee Hammond was a quarter pound over, and Coach Kavanaugh was like, hey, can you just let it go? Can we just let it slide? I'm like, man, I can't. I really would love to. I like Lee. I think Lee's got a bright future. He's a sweet kid. Didn't hang out with him, but you're around him enough to be like, hey, he's a sweet kid, but can't do it, John. So goes back, cuts the weight, comes back. But because he was, I want to say 180. I think it was 180 7 or 8 days before the fight. Easily the biggest guy on the show, not even
And
close.
how much does Kurt weigh probably when they're fighting? Because that's where you gain weight back.
Yeah,
right?
so he probably gained 15 pounds.
Yeah,
Easily.
y'all go to
Yeah.
McDonald's.
No,
you
just water.
pound it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just water. You know, like
Yeah.
a gallon of water is 8 pounds.
Yeah.
2 gallons of water, 16 pounds. You can easily drink 2 gallons of water in a couple hours. So before
Yeah.
you know it, you go from 155 to 170,
Yeah.
you know, in a 2-hour period.
Yeah. I think it's good that you made them stay to the weight. I think that's a big
Had
sign
to.
for your team because it's very easily for you to feel pressured into going, okay, man, that whatever.
Mhm.
Like it's a show and you
Yeah.
take out just the fighting of it. You're like, dude, we got production. Like this is Connor's dude. We got a lot of good interviews. Like it's like, just don't be weird. It's like a quarter pound. Like, and like you very easily could have to be like, all right, yeah, man, what does it matter? You know?
Dude, and I almost did that a couple times actually in numerous situations, but then all of a sudden you think, yeah, but it's not about you. You know, it's not
It's
about
about them.
it's about my fighter. You know,
Mhm.
it's about what message does it send to Kurt Hollabaugh? I'm like, hey man, just so you know, I let him slide.
Yeah.
And he's like, dude, this is my life. You know,
Yeah.
this is my wife and my kids' future, and you're letting it slide with it. Not that it would have made a difference, but you know, so that
Mentally
you
it
kinda,
does.
Yeah, and I think it does, and I think it just shows it continues to strengthen the bond when I dig my heels in and I plant my flag and say, no, I'm here for Kurt Hollabaugh.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm here for Kurt Hollabaugh.
Well, because it doesn't feel like anybody's gonna say no to Connor. And I'm the vibe of, and I'm not, but the vibe everybody has is like, or what you hear is like, Dana never says no to Connor, like all this. So it's for you to represent your team is a pretty giant thing that you do have to go say no over the littlest thing.
Yeah.
And even Connor's John Kavanaugh, like I know who he is. Like it's like, I mean, that guy, you know, like these guys are all famous.
Yeah.
And so you got to go, no.
Yeah. Kavanaugh walked to me. I was like, oh shoot. You know,
Yeah.
when I felt the Kavanaugh
Yeah.
presence, you know.
Yeah.
This is the biggest coach in MMA because of Connor and all that stuff. And I'm like,
And he's this dude's coach.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, part of it was like, no, I can't let Connor get his way. But most of it was
Yeah.
like, hey, I'm here for Kurt. And
Yeah.
you got to make weight. There's two rules. You got to show up. You got to make weight, and then you get to go fight.
That's the
you
whole.
know?
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah. So lo and behold, he makes weight, and it's not looking too good. After we're a minute and a half, minute 45 into the second round, and we'll go ahead and roll the tape here. You can just see, as we've talked about, the size of Lee Hammond. Man, just he's at least 2 inches taller than Kurt. Kurt was doing, and we talked about this too, kind of in our training sessions. You even heard me say, Kurt, don't do that jiu-jitsu stuff. And there's nothing against jiu-jitsu, but when you're doing jiu-jitsu and you're doing moves and you're trying to do this sweep, trying to do this trap, you can find yourself getting caught underneath. And if you're underneath, you're losing. And that was kind of what happened the whole first round, the majority of the second round. And they start to get a little squirrely here. You know, luckily for us, even here, Kurt is just blocking his head, trying to not to get elbowed back in the head. And it's just not looking good. For the first time in this competition, I thought, oh, shoot, Team Chandler about to lose their first fight. But Hail Mary Hollabaugh.
Yeah.
A little bit more distance here, thank God, which could have been a mistake by maybe a little bit of, you get comfortable a little bit by Lee.
Like Lee's like, I want to now make a point of pounding this guy.
Yeah. And then, so there's a little bit more space here. Kurt gets that 2-on-1, a little bit of a reversal, which should have been easy, right? Just lay on bottom for the next 2 minutes and you win the fight for Lee. But in this transition right here, Kurt, boom, goes for that guillotine, wraps it up very quick. Within a second, it's locked up. And now here's where the strength and the size of a 36-year-old man and a 26-year-old, young man comes in, and he's squeezing his head off, and boom, there's the tap.
Wow.
I
mean, it's Connor is destroyed.
Connor, and you can see, man, Connor really cared.
Yeah,
I got to give it to him, man.
Yeah.
For as much as they try to cut it and say, oh, Connor didn't care, blah, 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 it's like the dude cared a lot.
It meant a lot.
Especially when it came into, into this fight.
Well, yeah.
So it was the first time in, the fights that we watched that I thought, okay, here we go. We're about to take the first loss.
Where do you think his mistake was? Like,
he just, man, in jiu-jitsu, if a guy is really looking for a submission, if the guy's really good at, I don't think Kurt necessarily set a trap and Lee fell for it. I think we were just, you don't usually get submitted or caught in a submission when it's just kind of me and you kind of in a stalemate. It's usually in these transitions, you know, and that's what we even said kind of going into the second round. Hey, you got to move. You got to create a scramble. Scramble is essentially, hey, something is happening. It's like, you know, two cats chasing each other's tails or whatever, right? That's where your submissions get kind of, you get all of a sudden cinched in on one, exactly what happened with Lee Hammond there. And all of a sudden he's like, oh shoot, I'm in it.
and like, so that, and at that point, Kurt probably realizes I can only submit this dude.
Yeah. I mean, he's a minute and a half away from the fight. Even if Kurt was on top, landed 15 different punches, it was only for that last minute and a half.
Yeah.
Maybe it goes to a third round, but chances are Lee gets his hand raised, you know?
I mean, just to be like accidentally just have your neck up a little bit.
That's why we love the sport.
Yeah.
You know, that's why it's just, it's such a, you know, they're in.
And I mean, like, it's not like he's looking. His head is behind his back. So there's no, it's not like you're looking at him and you go, and he just lifted his neck. You have really no idea except feel.
Yeah.
You're just trying to get it in there. And then once you get it in, I guess it's just like, well, now. So he just knew.
Yeah. And Kurt, like we said, Kurt owns 2 BJJ gyms back in Franklinton, Louisiana, I believe it is, or, you know, in Louisiana somewhere. So he's a BJJ black belt. You know, he could probably grapple with his eyes closed, and he knew the head was there. And a lot of times we can do that, you know, when we're grappling or whatever. You kind of know where the arms are, where the feet are, where the neck might be.
But Lee wanted to be on the ground too.
I mean, after beating, you know, Kurt up that bad in the first round, absolutely. He wanted to just sit on top. Or even, like we said, he could have just rolled to his back and played guard, bent on his back for the last 2 minutes and won the fight just by not getting submitted. All he had to do was not get submitted or knocked out.
So maybe he got a little excited or a little like trying to finish him or like, you know, that's
tough.
It's tough.
Especially.
And how do you look at that as a fighter? So if you're Lee, like Connor he does do very good with, like, I liked how he goes and talks to both of the fighters and them, and just was very positive towards them. And then obviously when you guys get into it, but he, at least with the 2, you know, the other guys, they're very nice or whatever. But how do you, when you go into that and you lose like that, I mean, it can't feel, you're like, I'm better than this guy.
Yeah.
I made a huge mistake. I guess you gotta, it really, that his career will be based off that. That's how you become a Kurt, that experience to go, you decide how this is gonna go.
Yep.
It's either gonna be, you're done, or you're gonna be fine and like, who cares? Like,
yeah, it's very much mindset after that. You know?
He was very undefeated.
Yep.
Which, I mean, I guess he still would be 5-0.
Yeah, because these don't count on your record.
But
so but I agree with, like, kind of like what you said though too. Connor did you know, Connor he wasn't very emotional when he talked about the loss. You know, he was like, hey, you did everything right. You were touching him up. He had nothing for you. He didn't lay a glove on you. And all that is true. You know, whether I'm a Kurt Hollabaugh believer, of course, because he's my guy. But aside from that one mistake, would Kurt Hollabaugh have lost that fight? Absolutely. 9 times out of 10, if he doesn't catch him in that guillotine right there, we could be sitting here and saying, man, Kurt's a great dude, loved his spirit, he was awesome, but man, he got manhandled on the ground, and Lee was on top of him for 10 minutes of that fight. So he had to lose. It was just where it was. But Hail Mary Hollabaugh, as we said, he caught him.
And then what do you feel like as a fighter if you win like that? Like, is there a weird, like, yeah, dude, I'm sorry. Like, but you want to go like, but that's the deal, dude. Like I knew you were beating me. So my only chance was to hope you made a mistake.
Well, it's a very good question, because you got to think of me as a coach too, because I just was elated. I'm pumped. Give him a hug, dude. I'm so proud of you. So pumped up for you. But in my mind, I'm like, dude, where are you at right now? Like, you just got dominated and kind of got quote unquote lucky. So I'm like, hey, it's time to pour into Kurt and make sure Kurt doesn't think that. Cause I had this sneaky feeling. I'm like, okay, wait, does Kurt think, was this actually that much more positive for him to win next round? Or does he think, well, I'm just a dude from Louisiana who kind of got lucky. You know, I got to make sure, hey, Kurt, you were supposed to be there. You had that opportunity. You were put in hero position to have that happen to you, to win in this dramatic fashion. You know, you flip it and do that kind of reverse psychology of, hey, you weren't supposed to lose that fight. Yeah, it felt dark. Yeah, it felt like you were going to lose. All of us thought you were going to lose at that point when there was a minute and a half left and you were showing no signs of yourself getting up, getting out, reversing the position, not really doing threatening with any submissions. All of us, if you polled everybody, would say, well, he's about to, get ridden out these last minute and a half. So then as a coach, you think, okay, we got to get back into Kurt's head and say, hey, you deserved to win this, because it's a very interesting point that you bring up, because you're like, as a fighter, I mean, there's been times where I thought, shoot, man, I kind of got lucky on that one. Yeah. And it doesn't really increase the ego, confidence.
Well, it's like I love thinking about like mindset stuff, but some of it, I always say it's like, well, it's one of those, like, don't let me figure it out on my own is the way. And like, you gotta, like, I would think if he looks at it like that, like, look, there's a lot of things. Do not let me do something, figure it out. If you make a mistake, do not, because I will, be like, I'm 36, you're 25. It's, I've already done this. I've got so many fights and blah, blah, everything's against you. I still want to keep going. And then the mindset is like, don't mess, good luck. Just don't mess up.
Just don't mess up. Yeah.
You will beat me if you don't mess up. Yeah. But I swear to you, if you mess up, I promise you.
That's exactly how
it was. It's that mindset. Like, and that's like a veteran guy to be like, what do I care, dude? If I lose this or whatever, like, this is kind of the last run. But I've kind of seen everything. I mean, 10 more years of rolling around on mats. That's, and if you do it, and they do it every day, he's got a gym. I mean, that's 10,000 hours. That's just right there. It's like, just someone's going to, and then he can just stay, being able to get hit like that. I guess you got to take that. I mean, the knee thing probably helped at the beginning. Yeah. You said like that, the big cut on the knee. It looked, because there's one clip sign of it. It looked gross.
It was nasty. Well, now that we've talked about the fight, and because I haven't told you this, he ended up having to go to the emergency room, but it's right on his kneecap. Yeah. So he probably had to get easily stitches on the inside, outside. So he probably had 20, 30 stitches. And then they ace bandaged it up completely straight and put him in a straight brace. And he had to walk on crutches the rest of the show because he couldn't bend his leg because it's right on the bend of his knee. Yeah. So there's no bending of that knee for, I don't know, with something that deep. Wow. Probably 3 weeks. Yeah. So that was the result of that. And it was that bad, that deep. Plus, it could have very easily gotten infected because it was right on the knee. Yeah. It was nasty. Y'all
really worry about infected stuff?
Yeah, I mean, especially it happened in the first 3 seconds of the fight, and then all of a sudden it's rubbing all over his sweat, Kurt's sweat, their shorts, the gloves, the mat, which there was already a fight or two on that mat that night before. So it's just like,
that was like the cold sore the guy got.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Yeah,
and that's like, that's just dude. Like from the mat. Like,
I mean, I think that's more of it. Just it flared up. He probably gets some on his lip or whatever, and it flared up on his face or whatever. It's like.
I would think infections is the last. Like, you had a cut. Like, like when you go run around playing dirt as a kid, you don't ever think. But I guess you're like, it could get real nasty.
Yeah, I never think about that. Yeah. Which is probably a good thing.
Yeah.
Or else I'd be worried all the time.
So that was a kick that he. And
so that was bone on bone. Yeah.
And so you're trying to place it that, like, I mean, it's almost, are you just kind of like, the leg kicks, because the leg kicks, when as a fan, when you watch it, a lot of leg kicks. And I've learned to appreciate the leg kick just because I've seen fights where by the end you're like, oh, the guy can't stand anymore, or he can't use his legs are gone, and it looks like, like John Jones doesn't he kick a lot? Like, it's just a lot of like, just all right.
Well, so that was a traditional leg kick where he was going to take the shin and hit him in the big belly of the muscle. It kind of gave you a huge dead leg. You hit him with enough of them, he can't move. But he must have either checked it or it was a weird angle. So I think it was shin right on the patella bone or kneecap, whatever that bone is called. And obviously, anybody touches their knee, you're like, man, okay, there's really not much padding there. It's basically some skin and a tiny little fat pad, and then it's bone. So it was essentially bone right on bone, and split him open. Literally, I saw the kick and I looked down and it said 457 on the round one. I'm like, so it literally happened 3 seconds into the fight. And then he had to fight.
And it's crazy. And he was that, and then he still should have won.
Yeah. He was definitely dominating until, as we call it, he'll forever be Hail Mary Hollaball. You know, but then I said that to him, but once I said it, I was like, as a coach, I probably shouldn't have called it Hail Mary Hollaball, because Hail Mary implies that you would have lost if you wouldn't have thrown the Hail Mary and caught, so then I had to kind of backtrack to him like, hey, Kurt, you were put in that position for a reason. You are a veteran, kind of, as I said, getting back into his psyche, my psyche. What is the story here that we're telling ourselves? Because life is all about what story you're telling yourself, right?
Was that his first fight?
That was his first fight.
In a while?
Shoot. I actually don't know.
Yeah.
I can't think of off the top of my head, but some of those guys were training for fights. Some of those guys hadn't fought in a year or so. I don't think Kurt had fought that recently, to be honest.
So that's where it's like too, it's like mentally dude, you should have lost probably.
It's tough.
And but odds are if he's 36 and owns 2 gyms, I can't imagine he's fighting, and he has a bunch of kids and they live on a farm. They're, like I said, living the dream. They're out there. It's great.
20 acres and a bunch of animals.
20 acres, a bunch of animals, a bunch of kids,
Crushing it,
wife.
dude.
Yeah, dude, it's awesome.
Now's a good time to thank our show sponsor, CarShield. We're all about who's the greatest here, and CarShield really goes to the mat for vehicle owners. They're the #1 most trusted auto service protection company in America, and they're here to help protect you from surprise car repair costs. Flexible month-to-month plans through CarShield can cover up to 5,000 parts of your car after they break down. When you're covered through CarShield, you'll always have someone in your corner at the repair shop. Visit carshield.com and check it out now. Now, back to the show.
So I imagine he hasn't fought. And so that's, it's like, maybe if you're older, you're like, you don't look at it as like, even though you're saying it's his Hail Mary, but I bet it doesn't really feel Hail Mary-ish as much, because you're like, yeah, dude, I just got really lucky. Like, I haven't fought in forever, and he's like, but now I know.
Yep. Well, and even, me now knowing how the show progresses, and even me knowing what it felt like the next training, the next practice, his demeanor completely changed too. It was not, hey, I got lucky. Hey, I shouldn't have won. It was like he had his eyes fixed firmly on the prize. Cause Lee was maybe that's just the way Kurt was leading up to a fight. He was very quiet. He was very reserved, which I like a quiet confidence, but I was a little bit concerned with, he said it, but he would say the right thing, but I wasn't quite sure if he truly believed it, And then from then on, that next day, I was like, dude, okay, now I see a different fire in Kurt. It's that extra win, and maybe he hadn't fought in a while. Maybe that was whether it was a quote unquote Hail Mary, whether it was, hey, I lost most of the fight and then I got the submission. I got lucky. This guy said I got lucky. Dana, might have said this, whatever. He still wore it like a badge of honor, and then went into the next practice, and I was like, okay, wait, Kurt might be the front runner right now, because he just turned into a different animal,
Yeah, well, so it's like, just to be, you show there's a weakness in the fact that he's losing like this, and then you just show, it's crazy. The luck is like, the reason too that you take luck away there is, I think, because it's a choke. Like if it's a hit, like a punch, that probably feels you got really lucky. Like
a puncher's chance.
Yeah, puncher's, like you just caught someone perfectly, and you're kind of like, I'm sorry, that was, but what he did was like, he just had to wait around, and he's getting pounded.
Skill. That was all skill.
Yeah, you get, you got to be able to sit there. These dudes get, these dudes, you get pounded. And taking a punch is like, so that's everything.
Mm-hmm.
If you can keep getting hit and not like Tony Ferguson, until the foot hurts a lot.
Yeah, the foot. Before that, he was able to take a lot of damage.
He took a lot of damage, but look how much it took to get him out. The foot, you go, I got to use the bottom of my feet for this dude
as hard as I possibly can, like a punt.
Yeah, they don't. It's like insane. Nate Diaz, someone that just goes,
dudes,
and you're like, these dudes just get. Like, you're like, God, how are you not going to go down?
I know. But like you said, so also too, that quiet confidence of the veteran too. And that's where Kurt was just like, kept his, and I don't know where his mental psyche is during that. He's probably just like, okay, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah,
I got kids and I got mortgages and he's probably thinking, I'm going to just bide my time. Right.
Yeah.
So then you got Connor's guy, Kurt's confidence ends up getting the submission. And then, let's talk about what happens after the fight. Kind of obviously what the producers, the guys who were cutting the promos, they were waiting for this, finally everybody gets to see when the the spat between Connor and I happens. And this was where what I was just saying kind of earlier. Connor was very complimentary of him. Hey, he was saying all the right things.
Yeah.
It's not a loss on your record. You're winning the fight,
Very
doing
nice,
everything
yeah.
you needed to do. And it's true. I mean, you can either let a loss like this break you or help you break into the young man you're supposed to be, break into the champion you're supposed to be. He could still be a UFC champion just because he got caught, right? So Connor's kind of saying all the right things.
Is he probably the before the show starts, is he the kind of like the star of, I mean, is it Connor's, because Connor's attachment, and then he's also 5-0 and blah, he's young and,
Yeah.
not saying he's better or worse, whatever. Some of it plays into it. They're obviously, as being an older person, you realize they're not going to make Kurt, you're like at 36, they're like, yeah, dude, we're not going to make you, we're not going to put you on the cover.
Yeah.
Like, but like in a way, this with him, it's like, yeah, there's like, all right, this dude's probably.
Well, yeah, now that you say it too, I remember they showed a picture of Connor and Lee Hammond that I've seen before. I think Connor posted it on his. It was years ago because people were reposting it and they're like, hey, the next big guy coming out of Crumlin or coming out of Dublin 12, they call it, right? So yeah, and he's got SBG next to his name, the Kavanaugh affiliation. He's got the look, he's got the accent, he's got the package. Plus as you said, the ringing endorsement of the sport's biggest superstar.
Yeah.
So yeah, this was one that I was thinking the entire time, like, this is whoever draws this guy's, it's going to be a tough one, but I know Kurt's got the abilities.
Yeah.
So let's see, as I was saying, Connor was going and saying all the right things. See what he says here.
One shot on you.
Didn't land one shot on you. Then you can kind of hear the music building up too.
Fine coaching out of Bellator.
Fine coaching out of Bellator.
That's good stuff, Bellator.
Thank you. And I'm just laughing at him. Thank you. Yeah. And that's where I'm like, hey, we're going to keep stacking them up. You can say I'm a Bellator coach. You can say I'm Bellator this, Bellator that. You can say whatever you want, but we're just going to keep stacking them up.
Yeah.
Team Chandler going to keep on stacking them up.
Yeah, you're 6-0 now, right? Or 5-0?
This is 6-0. 6-0, man. 2 away from a clean sweep.
Yeah.
And I felt good about the next 2 fights.
Yeah.
So I'm like, this was probably the one where I thought, shoot, this is tough. Looked like we were about to lose, and we ended up winning. My team's, kind of high on adrenaline.
Greatest experiences of my life, something that I'll never regret.
I say keep on stacking them up.
Yeah.
Being able to come out victorious.
So freaking happy for Kurt. Connor a little ticked off.
Let's go.
Stacking them
Not
up.
against me.
I'll stack them up.
Not against me and not. Good
Stacking
job.
them
Great
up.
work. Great work, coach. Great work.
Stacking them up, baby.
Not against me and not Michael, yeah? Some of these kids are in the UFC before you're in the UFC. So don't be start trying to say, yeah, this and that.
As long as you show up for them, maybe if you showed up for them,
and break your nose, you little fool, you.
Come on, dude.
Yeah, what? Little tick, you little tick, you.
Wait.
Oh, we're going to do this? We're going to fight right now? Get out of my way. Connor's taking his coat off.
Yeah.
Conor McGregor grabbed my face and pushed me. I'm ready to fight right there if it goes down. Dana jumps in.
Get out of here, you two.
Hey, we're going to keep stacking them up, baby. We're going to keep stacking them up. Show up for my team.
I'm happy I got in because they were trying to filter this thing about the weigh-ins, right?
I'm sorry you guys are on that team. I would have been there for you.
Those are 3 guys that lost already.
Yeah. That's a big move for you to do that.
That was a big move.
That was a big move.
That was a big move.
Yeah.
It's me who said
That was-
first of all. It's not like I just left them to their own devices.
I'll let you
It's
unpack
actually
it.
quite the opposite.
Yeah.
Amongst the best.
Hey, don't start talking now, you losing.
And then my guys. Then he calls my team bums.
Yeah.
My team was chirping, dude.
Yeah.
My team was chirping. Connor's chirping. I'm saying keep on stacking them up.
I'm going to stand for them and make a case for them. And that's what we done.
He's 0-6. I knew that was coming.
Let's keep stacking them up. Let's keep stacking.
So that was kind of the theme. Hey, you're going to keep on stacking them up.
Well, that's what's so amazing. I mean, you going over and high-fiving his team and saying, like, that's crazy. I mean, that, I'll be honest with you, might be the most craziest thing, even over the push. Just as it's just deflating. I mean, look, I'm not trying to, I'm just, as watching something, that's a very deflating kind of thing. It's a smart thing to do.
Well, it was, those were 3 dudes that had already lost.
Yeah.
And at that point, we're however many weeks in, I had a couple conversations with those guys, not, nothing different, but it was more just like, hey, you're not a threat anymore. You're not going to fight my guys anymore. Therefore, if I'm having a conversation with one of the Team McGregor guys, I don't want the next guy who's fighting him on my team to think, oh shoot, why is Chandler talking to that guy?
Yeah.
Those guys are out of the competition, and looking back on it, I just think about that's these guys' future. That's their entire life. And, I was in the heat of the moment, obviously, like, I showed up for my team, if you guys were on my team, I would have showed up for you, it's like, and I see, obviously I will say they're showing Connor was there, Connor was there for his team. He didn't show up to the weigh-ins or whatever, which isn't that big of a deal, but he was in the training sessions. But
Connor was there more than it. I mean, because when you're watching it, it looks like he's there, but it's not like you're there, dude. Like it doesn't, I'm just saying watching it, it's, that one, the call, the 144 and and you're like, I got to talk to, this kind of big thing. And then, you're having to like debate it with this other dude and
his
you're like,
coaches,
well, it's not about, it's kind of, that coach is in a weird spot. And then you're like, yeah, dude, I mean, what do you mean? I shouldn't even be talking to you.
That's what they said. They said, "Hey, Connor, it's between you and Connor. You guys are gonna work it out." And I'm like, "Okay, cool. Me and Connor are gonna speak at some point. I'll meet him at training session, or he'll meet me at training session." And never mind. His coach comes over and says, "Hey, 135, no negotiations or whatever." Blah blah blah. So, it seemed like that to us, obviously. But obviously, when you watch the footage, he was there for his guys. He definitely was obviously there for Lee Hammond. But, and that was kind of when we got in each other's face. It was like, what do you say? Some of these guys were in the UFC before you were in the UFC. Yeah. Well, duh. I don't care. I got in the UFC 3 years ago. As long as you show up, I can't wait to break your face, basically. He said, I'll break your nose, you little Bellator tick. Yeah. You Bellator tick. But, obviously it was.
Well, you did great because he's so good at that. And it's very funny. And it's very fun to watch. And he's, saying that stuff. What happens if y'all really would have fought? Like if you say you get into, because when you train, because you always see this in UFC, where everybody's like, dude, we'll fight right now. If you and him got in a street fight, would it look like your MMA fight?
Well, I think no matter what, we would have started fighting. And as you saw, Ryan Bader was in there. He pushed Connor's guy away. So we kind of had the two biggest guys on our team pushing each other away. You had me and Connor there. Dana was in within seconds. Connor's security guard.
Yeah, they're never going to let it happen.
Yeah, Connor's security guard was there. So I think there was a moment there where he was taking off his jacket. And I'm like, okay, well, are we going to fight right here? And I can tell you this, dude was ticked off. Really, he was definitely mad. I mean, because you got to remember too, it wasn't just between he and I. It was between he and Lee Hammond. It was his sights set so high on his star pupil about to win the fight.
It might honestly be the reason he did the show.
I think actually, crazy.
So I mean, that's the What's the he's got a. He's, obviously probably close to being done. You're going to have to be as he's gotten older. You got a dude that's a star dude from your town, from your everything. Let me go do this show. I'm going to put you on the map. And then you go from there. And then that did not happen. And that's a lot of plans that could be fumbling away when he does it.
That was obviously, and it all happened so fast too. It wasn't, he legitimately went from, shaking hands with Kurt Hollabaugh to straight to, these dudes were in the UFC before you were, blah, blah, blah. Then I said, hey, as long as you show up, then it came.
I'm glad you said that though. Cause you went back, cause that's what it is. You're selling. And that's what he is great at, is selling a fight. He does seem very respectful to the fighters. And I see stuff he does with kids or it's not, he has this allure sometimes where it looks like, oh, this guy could be the biggest jerk in the world. But then you see that kind of side where you're like, no, I think he's very respectful of those. And then he gets into it with obviously what you are selling a fight, but that's what you did. So you did, I would, the Bellator thing is very funny, but I don't know, man. It's like yours just lasted longer. Yeah. The Bellator thing, it feels, if you're looking at put down, the Bellator things, I do think is so funny. It's just very funny to be saying that. That's a funny thing to say. But you to go just show up your team, you're like, well, that hurt. Now you'd almost be like, you're like, all right, dude, well, Connor was being fun and now you're not. Like, but you know, but you have to be like that. That hurt.
Yeah.
And then you go and high five his team and you're like, good night, dude. And it's great because it just shows you like, I do not care.
No,
I do not care.
I don't care. And to me, this was a team competition, and that's what I signed up for. And I was like, there were 16 dudes here who were looking forward to their dreams, you know, and obviously the big thing for me, because I always go back to, and I've said this on this show a couple times, other interviews, is like, hey, when I got the call, I was sitting actually right in there in that chair when I got the call, hey, in basically 7 days, you're going to be touching down in Las Vegas, put your team together, you're coaching against Connor, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I can't wait. I want to beat Connor at this. I want to look better than him on TV. I want to look like a better coach than him. I want to do this. I want to do that. It was all about beating Connor. And then I met my guys and realized, wait a second, this isn't about beating Connor at all. I want this guy to win. I want this guy to win. I love these dudes. I love these dudes' stories. I love that they are coming back from, basically the virtual certainty that their career will never take off. They are quote unquote losers and quote unquote failures and quote unquote cut from the UFC. All these things that as athletes, as even a guy like you who was kind of you would consider yourself a late bloomer, right? Like, did you ever, maybe think like 7 years ago, you're like, maybe I'll never going to get that as big as I thought I was going to.
Yeah,
right?
you don't think. I always say you make it at 20 or people make it at 20 or 40 and no one makes it in the middle.
Okay.
For our age, but it's usually that you either get it very early or you have to go grind it out for the whole time. And then it's just a matter of who can last.
Yeah.
And you watch people quit. And then, but you don't, you find little check marks. I was performing on cruise ships. And I was like, because I was clean, and I was like, there was a check mark in my career where I go, all right, worst case, I can now probably do this, and I have to just do cruise ships, but I'll make a living and be able to do comedy for real. And like you find those little things that you kind of go, like I'm sure like Kurt did, where he goes, I got 2 gyms, we live in this small, I got 20 acres, I got land, I got kids. You know what? It gives you the freedom to then go like, hey, you can do this show. And it's like, yeah, I'll go do it. Cause he still wants this and he still knows he can do it. But you have check marks that you go, you're like you said, like your exit strategy. Yeah. Like they know, like, even if he goes and becomes a star, it's going to be 2 years. Like he's 36 years old. Yeah. Like it can't be long, even if he goes. So it truly is like, basically he's knows he's retiring after this.
I love that. And that's why I loved having the veterans too, cause I've been that guy, I lost 3 fights in a row. There was a lot of people who thought, hey, remember Michael Chandler guy? We thought he was going to be one of the best in the world. And he's actually not that good anymore. He lost 3 fights in a row. And like you said, mixed martial arts could be that way. Actually, any industry, it makes a lot of sense. Either you make it real quick, or as long as you can withstand the test of time, as long as you can keep on, keeping on.
Your industry does not want you to make it.
Yeah.
The industry, whatever industry you're in, they're not rooting for you to make it. They want you to fall off.
You have to grind it out. The problem in mixed martial arts is obviously we're taking damage, to the brain, to the head, to the body, all these different injuries. So, a lot of these guys, like a guy like Kurt, if he hasn't made it by now, this is their last chance, right? So that's why this sport is so awesome. That's why this show is so awesome. And that's why I resonated so well with these guys, so well with these veterans.
And what I was saying earlier about you and Connor, like in a street fight, I meant like for real, if y'all say no one breaks that fight up, say you and him see each other out and no one breaks the fight up and y'all just straight up get into like a bar fight, would that fight look like the fight we would see, or is a street fight just so different?
Dude, that's actually a really great question. Nobody's there. It's the Apex by ourselves.
Maybe not. No, I'm talking about Apex. I'm talking about y'all just out. Like say right there, it looks like what are you gonna fight right now? Yeah. Say, or there, they let you fight or something. I feel in Apex, I want you out on the street. So you're out. If you guys really fought each other, you cross paths on the street and everybody made a circle and just said, no, let them handle it. And y'all just really fought. You think it would go into like, kind
of be like one of these numbers where you're kind of circling each other.
Yeah, because y'all are just so good. I guess
that makes a lot of. That's actually a really great question. I think it looks different. I think it's more barbaric because it's not a sport. It's like it's a fight at that point.
Yeah, so then you're going to be, that's what I mean. Like that could be, that's where when you wonder, like there could be a different, like that's where like Nate Diaz is like, he could be number one. Or Nick Diaz, you're like, yeah, dude, no, you don't want to like, he's going to start grabbing stuff. You got a drill over there. Like, there's going to be a lot of problems. So it's like, who's willing to grab the most stuff?
Exactly. Who's willing to go there? Who's willing to take it to the next level? There's always that dude that you grew up with. You're like, okay, we were having fun. And then Bobby, he always escalates it.
Yeah.
He always goes to the next level.
Well, Kimbo Slice was like that, where Kimbo would do those fights in that thing, and then when he got into like professional fight, which was I saw him once at the airport. He was very nice. I just said hi to him, and I was like, and he was like, hey, very nice. But like Kimbo was like such a great. It was so great to see that because he's this fighter, like, you know, that can beat up anybody in the street, basically doing these backyard fights and blah, blah, whatever. And then he goes to the UFC against a train. You're like, and you could really see the difference. I think it helped. And I mean, it helped the sport in a way because it showed you, oh, like these dudes are much better. There's a joke that someone either did or something saying like in the Olympics, it might have been a meme. I don't know what it was. In the Olympics, you should have one regular dude like in the 100 meters. You're like, let a regular guy run
just so
too.
people had a point of reference.
Yeah, just so you go like, oh, they're so much faster.
Or the slowest person at the Olympics can't get made fun of for being the slowest person there. You're like, but they're still 10 times faster than even your high school, your high school friend who thought it was the fastest at your high school.
Dude.
Right?
The level that it's at. I mean, you golf now, so you can see when you play with someone that's very good, like that's a pro, it goes straight every time.
It's crazy.
And it's hard to sometimes wrap your head around what's really happening.
It is. Yeah, which was very interesting when Kimbo made the transition, obviously over. And yeah, like you said, if me and Connor fought, does it look like someone was there and said go, and we kind of did the thing and kind of circled around a little bit, or is it and he's wearing clothes? Do I just go straight up and grab his shirt and start
That's what I would imagine.
Socking robots, And is there a bar table somewhere? Is there a is there a cage?
He's probably got too much stuff on, and you don't.
That was the one thing. When you said that, I was like, hey, I'm wearing a tank top and I'm wearing some nice like Grayson joggers or something. And I had some decently athletic shoes on, and he had like dress shoes on. He's wearing a tight suit. I'm like, he was definitely more impeded. That's why he was taking his coat off,
Yeah. He had a lot to take off.
Yeah. He had a 3-piece suit on.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot to He's
like, give me a second.
Yeah. Hold on.
Okay. One more.
You're like, well, that's not the bar fight. I wouldn't give you a second. I would just run at you.
Grab that tie.
Yeah. Cause you know how like after a fight, like that when Khabib and McGregor fought and then Khabib fought everybody else, is that looked at as like, that's insane that you're like, this dude's energy is all spent and then he just goes and starts another fight?
That was the last thing I want to do after a fight is be like, okay, who can I fight in the crowd?
Yeah.
That's even more, because that's the one thing different about street fights, bar fights, whatever it may be. That is very chaotic because it's not the sport. And I don't want to downplay the sport, but when you're in the confines of competition, you can turn your brain into, it doesn't have to be fight or flight mode, right? You can be more methodical and be in the sport. And I think that's why a lot of people like to watch me fight, because I don't seem like I have that governor, if you will. Like I just kind of go fast.
Yeah.
But even once you leave the sport fight of mixed martial arts, and if you jump over the cage and got into a street fight brawl, your heart rate would definitely go to 1,000, because it's a different type of atmosphere that you're not trained in.
Your fights are you're very fun. So that's what it is as a viewer, I know when I watch one of your fights, it's going to be an awesome fight versus I like Khabib's fights. I appreciated more on the ground. It's funny on this show. It's like, it seems like they go to the ground a lot more than I feel like UFC feels very striky now.
Yeah.
And people are not really on the ground as much, but it feels, Am I wrong? Are they all going to the ground more
Well,
here?
my guys, I knew my easiest path to victory for us to win was to win the first 2 rounds, get our hand raised, right? Especially in these first 8 fights when we're fighting Connor's guys.
Yeah.
And the fight is won or lost whenever you're going to be judged on 2 rounds by those first 10 minutes, obviously. So whoever has the cage control more, whoever has top position more, whoever shows the dominant position is going to most likely win each round. So we worked, and you can see Connor's training. He's doing a lot of striking stuff. He brought Stephen One Boy Thompson in episode or 2 ago, which is, he's world class, one of the best in the world and probably the hardest guy to fight ever because he's got that crazy karate striking. But for me, I knew I wanted my guys to win off of the cage, both offense and defense, and I wanted to win the grappling exchanges, both offense and defense. And if we could do that for the majority of each round, the first 2 rounds, we were going to win the fight. So my guys were very grappling heavy, and there was even guys on my team that were like, hey, can we get some more striking? And we did. We made sure they got their mitts, made sure they got a little bit of play sparring. Like we said, we didn't do hard sparring. Didn't want my guys to get hurt, but it was a lot of drilling back and forth. And it was a lot of grappling, a lot of cage grappling, because I wanted to win the first 10 minutes. You win the first 10 minutes, you win this fight.
Yeah. Is the sport going to more like it's like, because that's just more fun to watch. Like people don't appreciate on the ground. I liked on the ground. Like it was like seeing Khabib, like once you get in the sport and you realize like what's happening, you're like, oh, this is pretty awesome. Like I really enjoyed watching this Lee and Kurt. And I could see now if you're sitting in the nosebleed, you're like, this is the worst.
You're like, I need to see some action.
Yeah. But you realize there's the most action going.
Yep.
And then it's just like that one. And then the slip up at the end that's insane, dude. Like if you were, because you could just be, I'd imagine if you're there in the crowd watching that fight for real, like you're like, all right, dude, I'm going to go get something to drink because a minute this fight's over.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be hard to explain what happened to the person when they came back with it.
Like, what, he choked him?
What? Well, how did he do that?
Yeah.
Why would he even let him up? Like why would he, like all that stuff? But I'd imagine it's striking is the.
Yeah, it's more fun to watch. It's more. It's obviously more encouraged by the UFC. It's more. I mean, you're never going to see. You got to remember too. These guys don't have a lot of money. If you're just signed with the UFC, you're fighting for 10 and 10 or whatever it might be. You get that $50,000 bonus. Heck, you got a nice little paycheck, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to get the $50,000 bonus grappling. You're going to get the $50,000 bonus with a slugfest, with a crazy knockout, maybe with some kind of really cool submission if it happens a really spectacular way, but 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a striking battle.
Yeah.
So that it's encouraged by the UFC, it's encouraged by the bonuses, it's encouraged by the fans. The loudest pops in the crowd are the guys who are, slugging it out. And then, ultimately too, the thing that Khabib did really well was he did strike really well on the ground too.
Yeah.
He would hold, like you said, that figure 4, hold the guy's leg and just beat the tar out of him and talk to him while he was doing it. So even for the person who didn't like grappling as much, he was still fun to watch, even though people made fun of him for just holding people down. But I'm like, dude, there's a lot of stuff going on there. He is breaking that person's
the fact
will.
he's holding is and a big part of this is like y'all putting your whole weight, like you know how to put all your weight on someone. So like if someone, if someone's on your back or if you let them on your back, like the person below you, they're just holding. You like make sure they hold all your weight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically. Yeah. You're putting the leverage, you're squeezing, putting the leverage in on them, putting your hips on them, putting your entire body weight if you can. If you're holding yourself up with your hand, that means you're taking off however much this weighs off of them. So you want to kind of be, for lack of a better term, like a wet blanket. You just want to lay on top of them. Let them carry. If they're getting up, it's because they're lifting up your entire body weight, not just 3/4.
When you prepare for a fight, so how much does it matter? Like, if you get added like on a 10-day notice or you get like that kind of thing, like when you're ready to fight, like is that just the biggest deal in the world to be like, dude, I was prepared to fight? Because it's like, I think that like the preparation for who you're fighting. So if you're fighting Khabib or you're fighting Connor, well, you're like, all right, Khabib's going to want to try to take me down or blah, blah, blah. And so you're thinking that. And then that last minute, like now you're fighting Connor. So now you're like, all right, this dude doesn't want to go down. And it's like just very hard to.
I think it depends. I think it could go one of 2 ways, and either could be really good. There's times where, it's almost better for the guy who would get who would take the fight on short notice than the guy who gets their opponent switched on short notice. Because, you know, me, if I'm training for Connor for 6 weeks and all of a sudden with a week or 10 days left, I'm going to go fight a guy who's completely different than Connor. I'm like, shoot, that's tough because now I am the guy who's in training camp.
Yeah.
You know, the other guy gets a free pass because he kind of takes the fight on short notice. It happened with Diaz versus Connor the first time, switched it up on 10 days notice. Everybody's like, oh, well, even if Diaz loses, whatever, he took it on 10 days notice. So the onus is on the guy who's been in camp too. But the big part too is, hey, I've been watching film on a striker. I've been training in my gym with the strikers. Now all of a sudden it gets switched to a grappling guy or vice versa. It's tough from the I guess the preparation standpoint, plus the mental standpoint of, okay, this guy kind of gets a free pass if he comes in on short notice and loses. Nobody really holds it against him, but they're going to hold it against me.
And how much? Yeah. And how much training is like when these guys are going to fight? Like, so when Kurt's going to fight Lee, like when they're training, how much is it specific to Lee versus just not like also just trying to be in shape for a fight?
Yeah, these guys specifically, there wasn't much we could do to get them in shape because it was a very short amount of time. When these fights happened, it was 12 days into the show, you know. So, and I think we picked the fighters. Picked the matchups 3 days into the show, 2 days into the show, something like that. So we had about 10 days where we knew who he was going to fight. And then the problem with Lee Hammond was there was no footage of Lee. We knew he was 5-0. We knew he was Connor's guy. You know, who knows? Maybe it was some kind of conspiracy where all of his stuff got taken off. You know, Connor.
Oh, really?
No, but there was no footage of him. Right?
Yeah.
There's a conspiracy theory out there that Connor, Connor had it all taken down.
But he only had 5 fights.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's probably not. But yeah,
there was nothing. I'm like, hey,
and Kurt, you're like, well, we got a movie about you, Kurt. Like he's got 150 fights.
Yeah, you got 150 fights, 36. You were in the UFC twice. Yeah, you got a bunch of fights on YouTube.
Everybody knows about it.
Yeah, dang near 30 fights. Yeah.
We don't have the time to even get all your stuff taken down. You got too much stuff up there.
Exactly. Yeah, we got people in the back scrubbing it, trying to scrub it off the internet, but it's going to take a couple weeks.
Kurt.
However, Lee, your opponent, there's nothing out there. He's tall and he fights at SBG. Good luck, kid.
Yeah, yeah.
That's pretty much how it was preparing for Lee against Kurt. But it was hilarious. Did we have one more clip we wanted to pull up?
We can. I've got. Actually, I think that's about it.
Okay, cool. I didn't know.
So with I'm sure you've talked about the Connor thing in y'all's fight. Yeah. I'm sure you still talk about it every. But it's like truly, you just have no idea. Like you're just kind of like, all right, like
when we're fighting,
or if you do, or if you don't.
No, we're definitely fighting. You know, all signs point toward us fighting. We're fighting.
Yeah,
we've been in contact with the UFC. They've been in contact with us. We're fighting. And so the funny thing is, things with a fight of this magnitude. Obviously, it's Connor, and it's not just Connor. It's Connor's comeback. There's a lot of people who were like, hey, Connor's never coming back. He broke his leg, sold his whiskey. He was in a roadhouse with Jake Gyllenhaal. Yeah. And he's partying or he's doing they have all these different theories about why he's not
jacked.
And he's big, why he's not fighting. He's not in USADA testing. But there's all these different things. So everybody says, okay, the deck is stacked against him actually coming back. And then it's not just Connor coming back, it's the comeback of the broken leg and all these different things. Yeah. Plus, obviously, I'm a guy that if the UFC had it their way, they would have me fight 3 times a year because I'm that guy who puts butts in seats. So it's a big fight. And obviously you got the Ultimate Fighter that's going every single week. So people say, well, if I don't have an answer now, well, the fight must not just be happening, So everybody's kind of just, they think the fight's not happening or Connor's going to fight somebody else or I'm going to fight somewhere else. There's all these different conspiracy theories going on. And I get it. With a fight this big, people want answers and they want them now, but we're fighting. We just don't know when.
Yeah. Is that USADA stuff? Is that a big deal? Like, so when you're like, because you get little, Bleacher Report or it's like notifications and it'll say like he hasn't tested, but then I never know if you're like, well, does that even matter? Like, or is it? But then I saw your post, so I was like, oh. All right.
Well, it matters because obviously I'm in it because I've been in USADA since I, signed with the UFC 3 years ago. He is no longer in USADA because he technically retired with his, injury. And then he knew he was going to come back and he would just reinstate himself. He just has not reinstated himself yet, which makes a lot of other people say, well, he's obviously not coming back if he's not in USADA. But it only takes 6 months and that's supposedly how long it's supposed to be. There's been exemptions before. Who knows what's going to happen? It's not my place to say, hey, he's going to get an exemption. He's not going to get an exemption. To me, we're fighting. Maybe it's not by the end of the year like we thought it was going to be, but it's definitely going to be. We're both chomping at the bit to get out there and fight each other. I think especially after this episode comes out and people are like, okay, maybe these guys would make some magic inside the cage. You know?
Oh, I think you would absolutely make magic. I think you would absolutely make magic in the cage. And I guess it's you wonder if he, like, the fear they has, does he want to do it?
Yeah.
But and that's tough on you because it's like you got to sit there and be like, you're like, dude, I could be fighting. Like I could be, the longer the wait is like, you're ready to go.
Yeah. This is the fight I've wanted, though.
Yeah.
You know, obviously calling him out.
Yeah.
Obviously, he has said numerous times on the show, in other media, other interviews, like this is the fight that is happening. This is the fight that he is training toward. This is the fight that I'm training toward, and all the rest of the stuff is just noise. And it's in life, especially in life and social media, and then everybody's a journalist these days. Like you said, you brought up Bleacher Report or MMA Junkie. Those are legitimate mixed martial arts media companies.
Yeah.
However, there's Joe from his mom's basement, wherever, be like, hey, I heard that Connor's fighting Jake Paul and it's happening, or all of a sudden a rumor swirls, and then all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, this is happening.
I read those too.
You do. You gotta read those. You gotta see what everybody.
I like what everybody's talking about. Like
even if the one only gets one retweet and one like, you're like,
boring.
This has got this one's gotta be legit. It's got 2 likes on it.
You're like, this other one's like, Connor joined the military. I'm like, what? All right. You got to go to the ones that are crazy just to have a little fun.
Oh yeah. So that's obviously, man. It was good to talk about this. I'm glad you were on this episode because I was
dude, I loved it, man.
And
it was such a great fight. Like just to be, I never in a million years would have imagined. And you can see it just in the way the way you handled it at the end, and the way it really was a great fight.
Yeah. And it's,
and y'all bringing a lot of people to the show. I know this show's been going for 31 seasons, and I've heard of it. I've honestly never really watched it. I don't know why. And it's been later, but I mean, you and Connor being on this thing is this a big thing, like, because it makes me like, I realize like I want to watch the show because you see all these other names on these cards and you're like, I don't know who everybody is. I want to know kind of the bigger names, and then this makes it where you're like, all right, I'm gonna go watch and like see. Eventually some of these guys are gonna be like, oh, that guy was I remember that guy, and then you get something to root for and stuff like that. Yeah. So it's such a positive thing for the obviously Dana knows what he's doing, y'all know, but it's like it's really a great thing. It's a cool, I mean, obviously, and that's what I told these guys too from the very get-go. There was no better platform you ever could have asked for. 12 hours on ESPN the entire summer. Oh yeah. It's and you don't know how it's going to get cut, how much you're going to be in the show, how much you're not going to be in the show, but you get your episode no matter what. Yeah. My 6 guys thus far have gotten their episodes. They've gotten their wins, and it was, Team Chandler's doing all right. Team Chandler's doing wild. Right. I mean, yeah. What the other when the Bellator and UFC thing? What's like that? Like Bellator, I don't know. I know they had that one. They had one guy I thought that was like one of the greatest ever. Pitbull. Maybe? Yeah, maybe. Maybe one of the Pitbull. I remember Ben Askren came over. But I remember just hearing about Rogan talk about Ben Askren, how he was like the high level. And it made me, I was like, oh, wow, this is going to be awesome. And then there was, what's that guy's name? There's a guy that I thought Dana tried to get him to come over and fight at the end. He might have retired. He's been around Eddie forever. Alvarez? No. I thought he's in Bellator. He fights in, I think he fights in Bellator. Ryan Bader? No, I don't know. Because Ryan Bader did the opposite. He was in the UFC for a long time, went to Bellator. I mean, this dude's only been in Bellator. He's never, I don't think, ever been Fede or Patricio Pitbull. Yeah. And that's the thing too. I was in that position where I was the multiple time champion and had my life set. I could stay in Bellator the rest of my career if I wanted to. I just knew I had to come over. And people ask, what's the difference? I mean, essentially, it's the exact same thing. It's a fight organization. You fight. You work your way up, try to win the title, try to stay winning the title. The UFC is just so much bigger from a media standpoint, from a notoriety standpoint, from a
people being interested standpoint. I mean, the UFC is the longest standing, biggest mixed martial arts promotion on the planet, and they will be that forever. You know, there's nobody that's ever going to come in and compete, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, unless there was like a live golf type of situation, you know?
Yeah, but they're not going to
think about that.
They'd have to buy them out. Like,
but even then, are those guys under contract with the PGA? Or are they just playing in the PGA?
I don't think so.
See, that's the problem.
Well, they play in the majors.
Yeah.
Like, you talk about the live guys?
Well, yeah, but they're not, the guys who were in the PGA didn't have to wait for their PGA contract to end in order to then go over to live.
I know. I don't think you have a contract with PGA. I think it's like per play. Like, you make the cut, you make money. I mean, you're in the standings, so you have to be in certain standings to get into every event or whatever, and you pick your events.
Yeah.
But I don't know. You have a PGA card. So, like, once you get it, you have it for 2 years or 3 years, whatever it is. And I think you got to, what I always heard was like you got to make $1 million a year roughly
To stay in.
So you keep it going. And then if you lose it, where Ricky Fowler, who just won, I think was on the edge of losing his card or something. So he dropped down, I mean, very, very far, and really, you know, because he was at the top, and then and now he's obviously worked his way back up, and so it's that same kind of.
But those guys were coming in offering crazy amounts of money, so guys were like, "Well, money talks." But the thing about mixed martial arts, because I've had people say, "Hey, you ever think there'd be a live kind of situation?" No, because all of us are under contract, and all of us are happy with the money that we're making in the UFC. Most of the top guys, right? You know, and it would just be. They're two completely different sports, you know, when it comes to promotion and how big the sports are and who cares the most and who do they care about when it comes to UFC, Bellator, these other.
Well, you're seeing what happens with boxing.
Yeah.
Boxing's too spread out, too many belts, too many, all this stuff. You just, for a sport to work, is you kind of really need it to be like the viewer needs to go, I go there to watch that. You know, I mean, a massive fan that loves the art of it will watch every, you know, I got my buddy Mike Vecchione, he's a big boxing fan. He'll watch fights on whatever. I'll go see Canelo fight, like, and that's it.
Yeah.
Or Ryan Garcia, or like, you know, like if it's gonna be someone, I'm like, oh yeah, I think I heard of that guy, and then I'll go watch those guys. But UFC everybody needs to be in one. If it gets spread out, it's not good. That's what live in the PGA. It gets spread out. It's not great. You got, you know, half of a group over here and then half's over here.
Yeah, and that's how mixed martial arts has been. Unless you are a diehard fan, everybody, you know, if you say, hey, we're having the fights, if you said, hey, this weekend I'm having the fights on this weekend, everybody said, well, it's got to be the UFC fights.
No,
You're not having the Bellator fights on or one championship. That's what I would say would be, in a nutshell, the difference. It's, you know, UFC.
I've started following some of the Ryan, the
the BJJ, like the grappling stuff.
Yeah, that Ryan guy, and then another guy.
Yeah, which is on UFC Fight Pass.
Yeah,
you know, so you get on your UFC Fight Pass, and a lot of those are being basically a platform that UFC has is streaming the grappling stuff. There was a little bit of wrestling stuff that was on, like amateur wrestling stuff. So
could those guys ever fight? Like, or is it just the striking is?
They definitely could. But the funny thing is, I've heard, you know, directly from guys like that who, you know, like a Gordon Ryan, he's making a ton of money in BJJ, and it would only tarnish who he was if he came over to MMA and didn't do that well. Just be the best in your thing instead of trying to, once again, like you said, spread yourself out.
Oh yeah.
Just be the best at what you do.
Be the best at what you do. That's my whole advice with, like, I do a stand up, is like, if you can be the greatest or the best at what you do, then you can do everything else, because those options come. Because they're like, well, I want you, and you're there on your own terms because you're this thing.
Heck yeah.
And so that's what I've always done. But yeah, I've seen that Gordon Ryan a lot more, and like all that BJJ stuff, which is fun to watch. And
Dude's choking each
that's
other
not
out.
UFC.
Dudes choking each other out, just like Kurt Hollaball. Shout out to Kurt
Yeah.
Hollaball. Hail Mary
Congrats, dude.
Hollaball.
Yeah,
was
that
good.
was the real deal, dude.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good place to wrap it up. Thank you so much, man. It's been cool to talk about mixed martial arts with you, and then obviously do the show now, and then we got six more episodes. We'll see how Team Chandler does the rest of the show. But right now, Team Chandler is 6-0.
I'd be sitting. I feel good.
You're feeling pretty good. So.
Feeling pretty good.
Nate Bargatze, the man. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And you guys, thank you all so much for tuning in. This is the TUF 31 Reaction Show brought to you by CarShield. And as always, God bless. We'll see you at the top.